Hi everyone, welcome back. Welcome back to me. It's been a while since I've been on the videos and on YouTube, but I'm back and I'm very excited to say that we are going to be reproducing weekly videos over the next couple of months, and we're very excited for the content that we've got lined up. We're very excited for our next big adventure, and I'd love to hear from you. If you have any specific questions, specific videos, specific advice you'd like to ask or us to shoot, please let us know in the comments below, and then we'll go ahead and do that. But we've got an exciting lineup, and in this video today, I'm going to just be answering some of the questions that you guys have asked over the last couple of months on some of the past videos that we've done. So you can listen up for some of the answers. You can read them in the comments below, but it's much more fun answering them face to face. So this question is from Brian Foster. He was asking me how I was feeling after my COVID experience. And I'm very happy to say that after 10 months of a fight towards recovery, I am fully recovered. I'm back in training, in a maintenance phase for the next while, but it's a really fun time for me. But I am able to train to the full extent that I would like to. So I'm very pleased to say that I'm fully recovered thanks to my doctors and my support team. My COVID experience, as some of you may have known and seen in the past videos, was quite a long one. I got COVID at the very beginning when COVID was first a big thing in South Africa, and was with COVID for about 3 weeks, went for x-rays, went to see my doctor, and they discovered that I had COVID pneumonia as well as myocarditis. Myocarditis is when you have like an infection in the heart and it affects the heart, and it's very dangerous for an athlete. And so my doctor immediately booked me off for 6 weeks where I wasn't allowed to work, I wasn't allowed to exercise, I just had to rest for 6 weeks. I was absolutely shocked at the time because I didn't think that I felt that sick. I was tired and had a bit of breathing difficulties, and I knew I had some stuff in my lungs that I was coughing, but it was quite a big shock for me to be booked off for 6 weeks. I've never had that much time booked off by a doctor, but I was very good at listening because I've got very big plans for my career as an athlete and for the next swim that I want to do. And so I was very diligent. I worked with my normal GP as well as my homeopath, who's a sports homeopath, and I worked closely with them in recovering and doing all the right things, resting and building very slowly back into exercise. So I would start slowly walking, watching my heart rate. I watched it really closely. I went for follow-up x-rays. I went for follow-up ECGs. I was given the all clear in about August. I had 5 weeks where I trained amazingly. I got some of my best times in training and I felt fantastic. And then I hit another dip and I had swollen glands. I was very fatigued again. I think I was under a lot of stress. There was a lot of stuff going on in my personal life as well. And I think that didn't help the situation. And so then for another 3 months, I was unable to train. I had to work very closely, watching my heart rate. Every time it went too high, I would stop. It was a very stressful time for me, a very frustrating time for me. I didn't feel great. And every time I did anything vaguely exercise-induced, I'd get a sore throat and my glands would swell. So I worked again with my homeopath and my GP. I worked closely with my coach and my biokineticist that I train with, and we just really watched what we were doing in terms of training, in terms of exercise, and I did a lot of rest. And then in February this year, when I went up for my final checkup, I had a bit of a break, which was a much needed holiday and time away. And then I recovered and I was given the all clear. And literally from that moment, I went to see a pulmonologist. I got a lung function test done to just make sure that my lungs were okay. And I was very relieved to see that I was above average, which you would expect as a swimmer. But with the history of the COVID pneumonia and all that I went through, I was obviously a bit worried. But I was given the all clear by her. GP gave me the all clear. We did another ECG and then I was good to go. And since then, I'm very happy to say that I've been 100% healthy and well, and I've been training really well. I've been feeling good in the water. I've been doing fast times, even though I'm not training to be fast. I've been doing some really fast sprint times, which has been really fun. So I've really just enjoyed this return to exercise and return to full health. And I have a whole new appreciation for the life that I have and the health that I have and the people around me that help me to achieve my goals. This is a question from David Hawley. He asked me if I do 10 kilometer swims or longer, whether I have a kayak or a boat next to me, and then where they put the food. So yes, for me, if I'm in the water longer than 2 to 3 hours, which is more than 10 kilometers, I will always have a kayak next to me and a boat for extra support. The food is kept in the main boat, and then the kayak will go and get the food from the boat. They take the food into a little Tupperware, which has got a piece of string on it. I've got a water bottle with a piece of string on it, and then they throw that to me like a fishing line, and I eat and drink while I'm treading water. So the food is kept in the main boat for the duration of a long swim. If I'm doing a short swim that doesn't need the safety of a main boat with a motor, I'll just have a kayak, and then I'll have food supplies there. So if it's a training swim, it's a 10 to 15K training swim, normally I won't have a support boat. I'll just have a kayak next to me, and they'll carry my food safely in the kayak and then just hand it to me as I need. I tend to feed every 30 minutes. So it's quite often, it's quite regular, but that's what works for me. And that's what I've worked with my dietitian over the years. And it works really well for me to just eat consistently to keep my energy levels up, especially because I'm doing such long distance swims. This is a question from Salim. He asked me, what's a good product so that you can keep warm in the water? For me, I find that having a very good flask is number one essential to keep things hot and to keep things cold. I'm very lucky. I'm an ambassador for Lizard flasks, and they keep your hot things hot for up to 8 hours and your cold thing cold for up to 8 hours or longer. And so for me, what I do is I put soup in there. I make a very comprehensive, holistic soup with a lot of good nutritional things in there. That really helps me on the cold swims to keep me warm. Or I'll have a hot tea. I tend to have something called rooibos tea, which is a natural herbal tea in South Africa. And we put a little bit of honey in there just to add a bit of sweetness, sometimes a bit of lemon juice, just to cut away the sweetness. But when you're in the salt water, the sweet is very soothing, and the honey is very soothing to your throat when you're in the water for a long time. And when it's hot and you're in cold water, it just makes such a big difference to keeping you warm. So when I do my feeding, often I'll have like a strict protocol of what to have at when and what point in time. But my coaches gets bored quickly, and she's actually very good and intuitive, so she knows what I need before I ask for it. So every now and then she'll throw me a surprise, or I'll forget what's on the list. And sometimes that's something like rooibos tea is like a really big treat for me because it's just so soothing. It's like baby food. Okay, so this question is from Jean. He asked me about the time spent in salt water over a prolonged period and what it does to your mouth, whether you can tear your tongue. So the short answer is yes. Prolonged exposure to salt water and the saline in the water does cause your mouth to dehydrate. It causes swelling. It causes your lips to chap. It causes constriction in your throat. And I had that experience when I swam my Easter Island swim in 2019, where I circumnavigated Easter Island. I was in the water for 19 hours and 8 minutes, but at about 12 to 13 hours, I had a big problem finding it difficult to breathe. My throat constricted, and I felt like I was unable to breathe properly, and I was worried that it was affecting my lungs. And so we took a bronchodilator, which didn't help, and then I realized that it was just the salts and that I'd be okay. But prolonged exposure to salt water definitely does have a negative impact on you, and over long periods of time, it can cause some serious damage. I know a friend of mine, Cameron Bellamy, who swam one of the longest swims in the world across the Bahamas. He had really bad problem with his lips and his tongue, and couldn't taste, and he's had swollen tongue for days after he'd finished swimming. So it is a very uncomfortable experience. The only way to really kind of deal with it is acclimatization, so just exposing yourself consistently to the salt water so your body starts to get used to it. The other thing that really helps me is Listerine. Somehow it just helps take that taste away from your mouth, but it's all temporary. So you gargle with it for a little bit, spit it out, and then 5 minutes later you have that salt taste in your mouth and that salt feeling and that discomfort. And it's a very uncomfortable feeling. And for me, that made my whole swim around Easter Island really unpleasant, and I couldn't disassociate it from it. So it was very unpleasant. Other things that help with salt are Vaseline. I actually had taken chunks of Vaseline and tried to coat my mouth with it to stop the salt from penetrating. But anything that's going to soothe your mouth. So peaches for me are very soothing. As I mentioned earlier, honey and rooibos tea. But using a really good sun cream, coating your lips, and Vaseline seems to help, and Listerine. I think those three things are really helpful to help protect that. But you can't escape it over time. You just have to learn to deal with it and manage it. Question from Aviva. They are training for their first open water swim, a 2-kilometer swim, and they are asking if it is sufficient to train only in a swimming pool for that swim. Short answer is ideally no. No matter how long the swim is, open water is very different to a swimming pool. But if you have no other option, there are things that you can do in the swimming pool to try and replicate what it might be like in the open water. So the first thing, if you're able to swim without lane ropes, that's helpful. If you can get your coach or whoever pull you in to take away the lane ropes for your swim session, that's helpful because then it's a little bit more like the open ocean or the open water where there's no guidelines. If you're unable to do that and you have people in the water with you, what you can do is you can ask them to make waves while you swim. You can get them to make the water choppy. You can get them to splash water with their boards or whatever around you. If you have that not as an option, you're training on your own, then it's just really about swimming and trying not to rely on the lane ropes to guide you, looking at the lane line. But things that you can do in the water as well is do some head-up swimming, so swimming with your head up for a lot of the swims, for lengths, just to get used to that sighting, get used to that positioning. So get used to having to look up in the water. Swimming in a pool to open water is a very different experience. Unless you have a windless day and it's beautiful and calm, you're going to have a very different experience to a pool experience. So you can get away with it, especially as it's a shorter swim. But ideally, you'd like to expose yourself to the open water just to get a feel of what it's like. Also remember, in a swimming pool, you can put your feet down most of the time. You can stop after every length. You can rest on the side. You're pushing off the wall after every length that you do. In the open water, you don't have anywhere to put your feet down. You don't have any wall to push off. You often can't see the bottom, depending if it's in a lake or in the ocean. It depends on how clean the water is. There's also other elements. There's salt water if you're swimming in the ocean, so that makes you more buoyant. It's also the taste of the water that's different. So there's lots of different factors to consider, as well as the fact that in the pool, you've got your own lane. If you're doing a race in the open water with other people, you now have hundreds of other people that are around you that you have to contend with. So you also have to get used to that, like, often people are frantic when they start their swim if it's a race, and you're just surrounded by splashes and people. Often people get kicked, their goggles fall off. So there's a lot of things to consider when you're training for your first open water swim. Okay, so Greg asked me my favorite goggles. My favorite goggles are Spurt. They are incredibly comfortable, and they've just brought out a whole different range for open water swimming as well. So I've been loving testing them. They've got some slightly bigger ones so you can see a bit more. They've got some racing ones. They've got clear ones. They've got tinted ones. So they've got a wide variety. I still have my favorite standard. They're junior goggles. They're green and blue, and they're clear goggles, and they're still the most comfortable. For me, they work. They don't leak. They stay clear for long periods of time, and they've just been my go-to, and they work really well for me for my long swim. So I'm a big fan of Spurt, and they have supported me really well in all the swims that I've done. And so, yeah, they're amazing for me. Those are my go-to goggles. They're simple. They're very cost-effective as well, which is fantastic. So to stop your goggles from fogging up while you're swimming, a simple thing to do is take a little bit of dishwashing liquid or some shampoo. Baby shampoo works really well. And you dilute that sort of 1 to 8 or 10 parts water in a little bottle. You shake that up, you put it in your goggle lenses just before you swim, and then you clean that out. Make sure you wash those out before you get in the water, because otherwise if they leak that fluid into your eyes, you'll have sore eyes. But it's something as simple as that really works. I always have 2 or 3 pairs of goggles on the boat during my swim, so after some time, if I find that the goggles are irritating, or if they're leaking, or if they're starting to fog up because I've been in the water for hours, then I'll just swap the goggles over, and my coach will prep them and have them ready for me. Okay, so Ali asked me for regular weekly videos to have some tips on how to swim in open water. He mentioned swimming into the sunset and not being able to see, and that made him swim a further 5 minutes. So yes, I'll definitely be doing more videos and giving you things that you can practice, but I'd love to hear your questions and requests of specific things you'd like to ask. In terms of the sunset and swimming into the sunset, obviously you can't necessarily control that. If you're doing a specific route, if it's a race, and that just happens to be the way you have to go, you kind of just have to work around it. So what you need to understand with open water swimming is there's so many uncontrollable things. And if you have a wave that comes or a current that pushes you, you are going to swim longer than you plan to swim. And so you've got to be flexible within that. If you are doing a race and that extra 5 minutes is going to cost you a place in the race or cost you the time that you're aiming for, then it's a different story. But even then, it's still very difficult to control. So you can maybe, if it's just a training swim, you can time it differently so that you swim a different direction, so you're not swimming into the sunset. But send me more questions, and I'd love to answer specific questions about what videos you would like to see. Sylvia asked about how to protect your lips for long periods of time in the salt water. I think I mentioned that earlier, but sun cream is very helpful, and a really good strong sun cream. Unfortunately, with your lips, and because you're feeding regularly, the sun cream doesn't stay on your lips. But the sun cream that I use is a sun cream that we have designed. It's locally produced in South Africa. I put out a challenge before my last swim around Easter Island to see who could make a sun cream that was environmentally friendly and natural, and that would last for 24 hours in the water. And Veronica from Green Fairy in PE, Port Elizabeth, it's no longer called that, came back and made this sun cream which worked. And so we have now produced it. It's called the Green Honu. You can buy it on our online store, and it lasts for 24 hours in the water. We have developed an extreme version, which is the one that I used when I circumnavigated Easter Island and swam for 19 hours. It's a thick white zinc type sun cream that will stay on your body for 24 hours in salt water. It's great for surfing, great for endurance events, great for your face. But we've also got an everyday sun cream as well in a spray bottle. We've just recently repackaged it, and that's also great just for everyday use, for short exposure periods in the sun. And what's fantastic about it is it's environmentally sustainable sun cream. It's packaged in non-plastic packaging. It's also made out of natural ingredients, so it's all friendly for the reef. Question from Gilhim. They said that they get nauseous before they swim in the afternoons if they eat before they swim in the afternoons. And what can you do about that? I think that is going to be a trial and error. I think you're going to have to play around with different foods that you eat and the timing of when you eat those foods, and then see how you respond to that. For me, I've had to train myself. I never could eat before training in the morning if it was early swimming, but I've learned how to eat certain foods that will help me. I'll make a smoothie, I'll have banana. I just need to have nutrition to fuel me for my training swim. Same as when I'm doing my events, my staged events, fuel is very important, food is very important. So you just have to figure out what you eat and when. We also have played around, and we know that if you have a protein, like a high protein snack before you swim, that's going to take 3 hours before it actually kicks in. So what you want to eat ideally before you're doing your swimming is something that's quite a high glycemic index. So it's quick releasing, something like, a sandwich or bananas or a fruit or something that's going to just release quickly so that you use it. If it's high protein, it's going to be a waste of time if you're only doing an hour swim. Or if you're doing a 5-hour swim, it's only going to kick into 3 hours. So it's just about timing what you eat and playing around with what works for your body type. I advise you to potentially speak to a dietitian about that. Contact your nearest person, because they can also advise you. You can really go fancy and do genetic testing to see what your body responds to in terms of your DNA and what diet you should eat. But that's just taking it to a level that's not necessarily necessary. But just play around with what works for your body. And then in terms of sandwiches, I mentioned in saltwater particularly, an avo sandwich is very helpful. And for those of you that don't know what an avo is, it's short for an avocado pear, which is a fruit that you get. I'm sure most of you will know it. It's a green fruit with a pip in, and it's very creamy, and it's full of fat, and it's delicious, and it's soothing for the throat. Okay, thank you for listening to my answers to all of your questions. If you have any more questions, please let me know in the comments below. And also, I'd love to hear what update videos you would like to hear, if you want to hear more of these videos, if you have more questions. And I'd love it for you to subscribe and like if you enjoy these videos, and share them with your friends. Thanks for watching. And if you also want to follow more, you can check me out on Instagram. You'll see all the things that I've been getting up to, and also exciting updates on my next big adventure swim coming soon.